Hey there, we are Rob and Joanna Tigan. Welcome back to the Growing Home Together podcast. We've been married for over 30 years and we've parented our 5 kids through all the ages and stages. We're excited to share our passion for caring for the soul of your family with you. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hey friends, thank you so much for joining us for the Growing Home Together podcast today. At our house, we have a big calendar that we hang on the wall in our kitchen, and it keeps everybody on track and hopefully on time for the ton of events and appointments that we have every month. And at the start of every week, Rob and I will pull that calendar down and we'll go over who has to be where and when and who needs what. So like this week, we had the dentist. Rob had some business travel. Our son had youth group and yearbook club, and tonight we've got a play, and tomorrow there's a big family birthday party, and we're babysitting grandkids, and the list goes on, and it's all on that calendar. But I have to be honest, when I was in the car yesterday morning driving, my left eye actually started twitching. But I know that we're all busy, right? And we all are craving space and time to just stop and to breathe and enjoy the people that we love. And sometimes that calendar on the wall can make that space just feel impossible to find. And when we do go too long without Sabbath rest and without intimacy with God, our souls suffer for it. And that is why I'm so grateful to welcome our guest today, Kathi Lipp. Kathi has discovered simple steps to creating a rhythm of rest for our families. Kathi's a speaker, a best-selling author, and she's the host of the Clutter Free Academy podcast. And she's the creator of a beautiful new book called Sabbath Soup, Weekly Menus and Rhythms to Make Space for a Day of Rest. Sabbath Soup not only holds delicious recipes, but it guides our way into making consistent Sabbath rest a way of life. Thank you so much, Kathi, for coming back and joining me today.
Are you kidding? After you just talked about your schedule, the fact that there was a moment to squeeze me in, miracles abound. I'm so grateful to be here, Joanna. Are you kidding me? This is the best.
No, this is the highlight of the week. I'm so excited.
Well, thank you for making space.
Yeah, you bet. I was hoping that you could paint a little picture for us of what your life is looking like right now, because you have a really cool situation going on. And we'd also love to know what inspired you to create Sabbath Soup.
Yeah. So we've lived in Silicon Valley for the last 20 years of our marriage. And while we were living there, we had some friends who lived in the mountains of Northern California. And they didn't live here. They had a second home here. Right. And like I was about to say must be nice, but that is the sheer sign of jealousy when you say must be nice. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying really happy for them. That was not our life to have a second home. But we would go use their home when they weren't using it. And then they rudely moved into their home full time. So we lost our mountain getaway. And Roger and I started dreaming one day, could we have a little, one room shack where we could go and write and cook and hang out and be in the mountains? And then our dream just kept growing and growing and growing until we started running an Airbnb where we could go sometimes, but we would rent it out most of the time. And then when we were in that house in the mountains, we would rent out our place in Silicon Valley. And we were living like that for a while. And then we just decided, hey, could we make it work in the mountains full time? And so that's what happened. We moved out of our house in Silicon Valley the week before everything shut down for COVID. And we were the first county to shut down, and we moved out and left COVID behind us and went to 33 acres in the woods where we now live full time. We both work here full time and do a lot of writers retreats and cook and do our garden. And it's just, I can't believe we get to live this life. But we've talked to other people and we feel like you can bring parts of that life to wherever God has called you to live. And that's part of what Sabbath Soup is about, is just saying, how do you create time for rest in a life that seems like it's built for anything but rest? And we are still very, very busy here. The work never stops, but we have to sometimes. And so that's why we wrote this book.
Yeah, it seems like sometimes we can be so busy doing all these really good things that we miss out on some of the very best things that God had in mind.
Yeah.
And I was just hoping to ask you, was there a point where you had kind of an aha moment that you realized that Sabbath rest was maybe missing from your life at all?
Oh, I can tell you exactly what it was. I was committed to Sabbath for our family. When Roger and I got married, we had a 13, 14, 15, and 17-year-old. And so it took a couple of years of that chaos to say, oh, this is not working for us. We need a break in our routine. So everybody got a rest. We would do a family dinner and then we would watch a movie for any kids that were around, teenagers, right? And what I came to realize is everybody was getting a rest except for the cook. You can figure out, okay, maybe I won't work this one day of the week, or I won't do laundry one day of this week. But everybody in my house still wanted to eat. It was very annoying. And so I realized that if I truly wanted to have a break in my rhythm and routine, I needed to plan a little bit ahead so that I could have that time off on Sunday, which it doesn't always work out every Sunday that it's, that's our day, but we really do try to have what we call down day a week. And I know for a lot of people, it can't be on Sunday. I think about those in the medical field or my next door neighbor who's a firefighter. I'm really glad they don't take Sundays off, but that just tends to be what works for us and our family. And we try to now say, okay, this is the day where we work before, we work after, but we don't work on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love that it was a intentional decision too. And I was thinking about all of us who, like me, whose eye starts twitching or you feel really busy or overwhelmed. But I might not imagine that a cookbook could be where I could go to find answers, because I might think I need a book on organization or time management, which I probably do, or a book about maybe the theology of biblical Sabbath. But when I read through your book, Sabbath Soup, I found that it really does lay out this beautiful connection between feeding our bodies and feeding our souls. So how can our habits in the kitchen have an impact on the way that we experience all the other parts of our life?
Food is so integral to every part of our lives. And, if you're the cook in the family, you actually hold a lot of power about how we do things and how we celebrate. And I started this whole journey by saying, hey, Sundays after church, we have soup. Because what I love about soup is you can make that on Friday and it tastes better on Sunday. I don't know how that happens, but it really does happen. And so when I just made the decision, okay, after church on Sunday, we have soup, that was a tipping point for us to be able to say, okay, that's a decision that's made and we can build off of that. So we have soup on Sunday, but then we also have soup on Tuesday because we have the leftovers, because we're never just cooking for the meal in front of us. We're cooking for the next meal. And then I wanted to have a special meal, and we do that on Saturday night. So that's like our roast chicken or potluck roast. And so I started cooking that on Saturday morning, putting it in the crock pot or whatever we were going to do. And then, so Saturday night, we would make that meal and have leftovers, which we'd have on Monday night. And then Sunday night, I'm like, well, I don't want to cook on Sunday either, Sunday evening. So I would make a family favorite on Saturday. So that would be like lasagna or chicken enchiladas or something like that. And we would have that on Sunday night. And just by making those 3 meals, it was amazing that, so now on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we are eating leftovers. Thursday, we're having something from Trader Joe's or we're going out to eat. Friday is always some kind of pizza in our house. That's how it's been ordained. And now what we do, that means that from those 3 meals, pretty much everything is taken care of for dinners throughout the week. And it just creates this really rich rhythm and routine that we can then bounce off of for the rest of the week to make it a little less crazy, a little less harried.
Oh, that sounds awesome. It made me think though, because I know in the book it touches a lot on that kind of meal planning and prepping and that kind of thing. And for some people, they might hear meal planning and just immediately start to feel stressed out because it might sound like just one more thing for the to-do list, right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
But it's not. Can you tell us why it's not?
Yeah. So what I'm doing is most people are like, okay, we're going to make a meal plan. So Monday we're having this, Tuesday we're having this, Wednesday we're having this. I approach it a little differently. So probably somewhere on Monday, I'm making my meal plan. And then Tuesday, I'm making my shopping list. Wednesday, I'm shopping. Thursday, I'm prepping. And Friday or Saturday, I'm cooking. And so really like our meals start on Saturday. And what I'm doing is I am reverse engineering our process. So we're just doing a little bit each day. Now, I will say Friday or Saturday, whenever you're cooking, and of course, adjust this to fit your own schedule. Maybe you meal plan on Friday and you're cooking on Monday because that's how your work situation works out. Whatever that is, it's fine. But going into a plan to gently go into this meal planning makes life so much easier. You know, Joanna, we just got back. I was speaking at a writers' conference, and it kind of throws off my routine when I'm gone for the weekend. But I came home and on Monday, and what I did was I put a couple of 4 baked potatoes in the air fryer, and I did a pot of rice, and I did a pot of pasta, and I just did those things for the bases of our meals. And because I cook like this, I had a lot of things in the freezer that were things like soups that I could put over the rice. And I had some pasta sauce that I had frozen with meatballs that I was able to put over the pasta. And the baked potatoes, I had some frozen chili that I was able to put over those potatoes. And we got home and we had meals. And so this whole book is about taking care of your future self. And it's not just about taking care of your future self, but it is taking care of others. You've had a big family. We've had a big family. You don't lose that cooking muscle, right? I don't know how to cook for 2 people, but that's okay because I don't cook for 2 people. I cook for Roger and I, and then I cook for leftovers for Roger and I. I also cook for our neighbor, the one who I mentioned is a firefighter. I bring him a bag of food each week because if I don't, all he eats, I'm not even joking, is Lunchables. And so I'm taking care of the people in my life, including me and Roger, and I'm putting things in the freezer so that if we have I call it homesteader fast food, where I am taking things out of the freezer and defrosting them, and I'm ready to rock and roll. Like after you and I get off of here, I took some marinara sauce out of the freezer last night to have for lunch today. And I don't even have to think about it. It's already taken care of. The October's Kathi is taking care of today's Kathi so that I just can sit down to a lovely meal that I've heated up in the microwave, and I'm really grateful for it.
I just feel relief just listening to that. That's awesome. And I have to say, like for me in this whole thing, I love to cook. That's actually how I do relax. I'll turn music on. The cooking process is super fun. What is not fun for me is the mental load of having to make all the decisions. Like when are we having what, right? And then people want to know.
Yes.
And so,
so
your book with just laying it out, like here's a suggested plan. Like the cooking part is a blast, but I'm like, and I don't have to think about it. I don't have to conceptualize it. It's just fantastic. So yeah, reducing mental load to me is the best part.
And Joanna, it was really interesting. I'm right in the thick of doing a lot of podcasts about this. And I was talking about how where we live, we only go to the grocery store once a week because where we live, it's the grocery store we go to is an hour and 15 minutes from our house. And the person I was talking to said, oh, I don't have to worry about that because I have a Trader Joe's 5 minutes away. And I said, yeah, I totally get that. And what a gift that is. And I have never gone to the grocery store where it didn't take me 25, 30 minutes to at least get there and come back, even when I lived down the street from one. And so just by deciding in advance what we're going to have. And, if you have kids who are like, oh, you're kidding, we're having crock pot. Well, feel free to contribute to the planning of the meals. We would love your input. But otherwise, we're going to eat, what we've planned out. And you can make sure you have all those ingredients. So you're not doing those quick trips to the store that can eat away at your day, especially when you have such a busy schedule.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, yes, this is creating a reprieve from the mental load and so many other ways. But, another way that you've really figured out how to cut stress is in the budget, because you talk about going to the grocery store all the time. I'm sorry. These are rough times to go to the grocery store, right?
It so is. It so is. And, for those we all are working with our 4 different stressors or abundances, depending on what you have and how you look at it. So there's time, energy, money, and space. I lived in Japan where I didn't have a counter in my kitchen. I would have to put a cutting board on my lap to cut things and, prepare things. So I've dealt with all those stresses. And if finances are the stressor for you right now, one, soup is an excellent way of stretching your budget, because soup is, with broth and things like that, and using up vegetables that might be getting a little sad looking that you don't want to put into your salad, but they'd be great in a soup. Or, there are so many different ways to eat things like rice and beans, where you can add a little bit of protein, like a little bit of chicken or a little bit of fish or something like that. But every culture has a way of preparing rice and beans that is delicious. We just had last night, we had some chili over some cooked rice. And it sounds a little odd if you've never had it. My husband's like, can we have this once a week? And it's such a simple, inexpensive meal, but it really is filling. It really is delicious. And it's a great way to use up. This is what I love. When you are planning intentionally to use up your leftovers, it's like free food, right? We call those loop meals left over on purpose, and they make such a difference to our budget.
Yeah, they do. You're making me think about when I make soup and do the clean out the fridge soup, right? And I was calling it dump soup, because it's like, well, we're just going to dump whatever we got in there, and my kids are like, I think you need to rethink the name, Mom, because that sounds really terrible.
Yes. Call it loop soup. It's loop soup.
Thank you. That's so good. But
on purpose.
Yes, but we saved on the front end because we used up the stuff in the fridge instead of tossing it. And then we can save on the back end, because if there's leftovers, they go in the freezer, and there we avoided a trip through the drive-thru. So soup is brilliant.
Exactly.
I love that. The other thing that I love, and you mentioned this with your neighbor, is that even in your house, because I've seen pictures of your house and I want to visit your house so bad. You set it up from the roof to the bottom with hospitality in mind. And in your book, you talk about your kitchen almost like it's this sacred ground where Jesus' love can be experienced and given away. It is beautiful. So can you tell us how meals can be just so much more than food? They can be ministry.
Well, first of all, that's about the highest compliment anybody has ever given me. So thank you. And here's how I think about it. Joanna, I have never been fed without feeling loved. When I'm at somebody's house, when somebody brings food to me, when I am invited out for a meal with somebody, that is one of the most tangible ways of loving somebody, is to feed them. And so if I can have people in my kitchen, and, I guess it's a big kitchen, but we have a big table in there. There's not a lot of room to move around. Let me put it this way. It's the biggest kitchen I've ever had. And some people are like, I can't believe how much you do with such a small kitchen. So, it's all a matter of perspective, right? But I know that I was a single mom at one point, and feeding my kids was tough. Even though I had wonderful people in my life, including my parents who helped us out, I'll never forget when somebody at church said, I would like to take your family out just, for a meal. And my kids were so excited. We were going to In-N-Out Burger. They were so excited. And we got there and she said, Kathi, what can I get you? And I'm like, oh, I'm not hungry. I'll just have water. Because I didn't want to take advantage of this woman's generosity. She was doing this for my kids. And to love my kids is to love me, right? And we were standing there at the counter at In-N-Out Burger. And she took my hands in hers and she said, Kathi, it would bring me so much joy for you to enjoy a meal. Would you please do me that favor?
Mm.
And I think about it to this day that, I wanted my kids to be loved, but I was at a point where I was desperate to be loved as well. And for her to do that simple act of buying me a meal, a burger, meant the world to me. And I want to do that for other people. I want, when they come into the kitchen, to already know, hey, you have a gluten intolerance? We've got 1,000 recipes here where we can take care of that. We want you to feel loved. We want you to sit down without fear, without being concerned about what's being served. We want to love you. I want to know what your favorite kind of cake is. And is that something I could learn to make? This is not how everybody shows love, and that's okay. But I know there's a reason that churches having food banks has such an impact on the community. There's a reason why taking a meal is what you do when somebody has lost somebody that they love. There's a reason that grief groceries are a thing. This is our tangible way of showing love. And there are other tangible ways of doing it, but I know this is how I've been loved in my life, and this is how I want to show love to others.
Oh, absolutely. And there's such a tie too between food and a sense of belonging or a sense of home.
Yes.
I mean, even if you're not home,
Yes.
I know Rob and I, for a number of years, were involved in ministry to international students. And it surprised me because people would say, you know what these kids want most? They want a bowl of rice, because in their college cafeterias, there's not rice. And they miss it from home, So I'm like, if these kids can come over and there's a big old pot of rice on the stove, that broke down barriers, It seemed such a small thing, but it seemed to mean the world. Or if I tried to learn a recipe from their culture, it might be terrible. I might do a terrible, terrible job. but the effort said, oh, you really see me. If they wanted to love us back, they would say, can I borrow your kitchen and cook for you? There was a student we had. She was from Egypt. She sat for 2 days in front of the stove with my daughter. They pulled the stools up to the stove and stirred and stirred and stirred so that she could make baklava.
Wow.
That was just love in a pot,
Yes, it's so true. When I have traveled internationally, I've enjoyed the food and I want to get home to my food the way I've prepared it. And when I lived in Japan, it changed the way I ate forever. I almost always have rice in my fridge. I almost always have something that I can add to rice because it is so ingrained. Okay, pun kind of intended there, to have rice with every meal. But rice is so versatile. And I love that. That's such a great thing to recognize, that what they want is rice. It's brilliant. A rice cooker, if I was living in that country, that's what I would send my kids overseas with. Now we do have rice cookers here, but from when I got back from Japan, there were no rice cookers here. And, to learn how to do that, every Japanese house has a rice cooker. And it's such a part of what they do. I think that is such a great way of saying, how do you love somebody tangibly? A bowl of rice. That's beautiful.
A lot of memories, and it seems like all of them are attached to some kind of meal that we shared, for sure. And it's interesting now because now the ministry I'm involved in is as one of the mentor moms in a group at a church where they serve mothers of young children. And every meeting, there is this amazing potluck brunch. And, they tried to drop that for a while. And I think there was a revolt because there was something so powerful about the food. And also these young moms, they're so tired. They're feeding kids all the time. Being fed by other people just was filling to their hearts too. And I have to say, the last meeting where I had to contribute to the potluck, I made your egg bake from the Sabbath Soup.
Oh,
And it was so good. I brought
Yes.
home a totally empty baking dish. It was so good.
That makes me so happy. I love
It
that.
was
I
really-
love that you fed young moms. That makes me so, so happy.
Oh, it's great. So that is now my new favorite egg bake recipe. But do you have any favorite recipes that you could highlight for us so we make sure we don't miss them?
Okay, so this might be a little controversial, but I have a tomato soup. It's called tomato gin soup. And yes, it does use alcohol, but the alcohol burns off. There's something about that flavor in there. The tomato soup has a bacon base and it is just delicious. And if you pair that with a Cuban sandwich, it's not the healthiest combination, I'm not going to lie, but it's delicious. And then another breakfast casserole in there is the French toast casserole. It's so rich and so decadent, and it makes me so happy. And a third one I'm going to recommend, it's not in the book, but it's a free resource. We have a cookbook on Amazon that's free that's called Soups On. And it's just 4 weeks that we couldn't fit it into Sabbath Soup. So we did it as a free download. And there is a recipe in there for my cream of chicken and wild rice soup. And it's just, it's what I take to anybody who's sick. It is like Thanksgiving in a bowl. And it's just wonderful.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, because I know we are definitely heading into flu season, at least in Michigan. So it's good to have that locked and loaded. So thank you for that.
I love it.
Yeah. And, your cookbook helps structure meal planning and cooking and, getting everything humming along in the kitchen. But you are an expert in managing the whole house. So can you give us some quick tips to help us deal with clutter? I mean, especially right now, I know we've got holiday gatherings coming up and all of that. So what do you do if you feel too busy to deal with all the piles?
Yeah. So here's what I would say, especially for the holidays. And if you have people coming over, when we declutter, for some reason, our brains want to go to the back closet. Don't do that. Start with surfaces, okay? Just start with the surfaces that are going to cause you anxiety, and start with surfaces in rooms that people are going to be in. So maybe don't worry about your bedroom right now and worry about the living room, the kitchen. The kitchen counter is your most valuable real estate in your whole house. So look at it with a really critical eye and say, are there things that I could take off of this, even if it's just for the holidays? I'll put them back later. Try to get as much off your kitchen counters as you possibly can. And then don't forget, as you're doing holiday stuff for Thanksgiving, Christmas, whenever you're listening to this, think about things that can be used to extend your kitchen. So your Instapot could be used to keep your mashed potatoes warm. Your crock pot could be used to keep turkey pieces warm. Think about those things that can extend your kitchen. Think about if you don't have a lot of room in your refrigerator. I know that this is a trick that many Midwesterners and Easterners know, but maybe in the South and, on the West Coast, we don't think about it as much. But putting your cooler out on the patio with some ice. Now, you probably don't need to do that in Michigan, and I don't need to do it here where we had 14 feet of snow a couple of years ago. But in San Jose, we needed to put the ice out there so that we could put things in our coolers to keep them cold. On the other side, you can fill your coolers with hot water and then dump that water out, line it with aluminum foil, and you can use that as a heat box to keep things warm. So I know that a lot of us, especially if we have cluttery homes, feel very closed in our kitchens. This is a great way of extending that kitchen, even if you can't declutter everything before the holidays.
Oh, I love that. That's great. And I had no idea you could use a cooler to keep things warm. Isn't
that crazy?
Kind of epic.
I just learned that in the past couple of years. And, even something like like a cooler bag, use the cooler bags to keep things cold, and then your hard-sided coolers to keep things warm. It's going to help a lot.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's helpful. Kind of back to what we were talking about earlier. If the purpose of all of this is so ultimately we can better our relationships and our faith walk and our own spirit, what is some of the fruit that you've experienced just personally from having these years of having this consistent rhythm that you've made?
Yeah. I still am tempted to busy myself out of situations. So I did not grow up in a particularly devout home. We didn't really observe Sabbath. So I was used to going 7 days a week. And I have found that if I don't intentionally keep a Sabbath, I start to fool myself with thinking I can work my way out of the situation if I just work harder, if I just work longer, if I just work more hours. Now, there are some times when you need to work more. That's okay. But what I've learned is when I try to rob that from Sabbath, it diminishes me on Mondays. It was really interesting. I read an interview with Dan Cathy, who founded Chick-fil-A, and he talked about how on Monday, their drive-thrus run faster. Their employees rate their days better because they've had that Sunday off. And so I know I'm a better human being on Monday because I've observed a Sabbath on Sunday. I have more peace. I have more connection to Roger. Because even something as simple as cooking together earlier in the week so that we can enjoy a meal together and just watching a movie or going to church or all those things contribute to my connection to him. And I'm so grateful for it. And so I need that break in my rhythms and routines to reset who I am with the people around me and with who God is.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think that there can almost be an addiction to busyness and productivity. Mm-hmm. And let's say, okay, this week, if this is totally new for someone, they actually clear the decks, the soup's on the stove, and they have this gift of time. We don't necessarily know how to spend it well, though. So what is your advice to have a quality, truly restoring Sabbath experience? Can you speak into that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When we are addicted to busyness, rest feels stressful. We don't know what to do with ourselves. You're exactly right. And so here's what I would say. If the idea you have in your mind is we're going to sit around and stare at each other, that could be overwhelming. So what if on Sunday, after you get home from church and you hang up the coats and you have that little bit of soup, what if you plan for your rest? If you say, okay, you know what, mom and dad would really like a nap, but we're going to put on a movie for the kids. Or we're all going to watch a movie together and it's okay if mom and dad fall asleep on the couch. That works. Or, you know what, instead of going home, we're going to go take a drive and we're going to do something different. Plan for an interruption to your routine. Not just an extension where your Sunday looks like your Tuesday. And so plan for something. And then at some point, as you start to dial back, you're going to start to be able to reset yourself, and your body and your soul and your spirit and your mind are going to start craving that Sunday or Tuesday, whenever that rest is for you. It's going to start craving it and know what to do with it. But be gentle with yourself if it's hard at first.
I love that way of looking at it as something that is different. I love that. That's making me think right now, my precious mother-in-law is here for a 2-month visit. And this is after the longest stretch of not seeing each other that we've ever had. So having her here is a gift. And, one of my favorite things that has come out of her being here is that she is so good at that. And I think we've played more games as a family since she's come than we've played in the last 2 years combined, because she's so good at just drawing people together, stepping away, closing the laptop, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so she inspires me that even after she goes home, that we carry that forward, because it is restoring. And I notice I'm going to bed more relaxed and we're laughing more, and there were treats on the table, and it's like good things.
Oh, what a gift. And, I think it's so important to say sometimes we need help with this. The last thing I wanted to do was write a book that made women feel like the expectations were heightened, that they had to create this for everybody. This has to be a group project. And I love that your mother-in-law said, okay, you know what? Because she wants to connect with you and with Rob and your kids. And she has a perspective that a lot of us don't have until we've aged, right? That these are the times we remember. These are the things that we want to keep close to our heart. And I love that she did that.
Yeah, I do too. She's the best ever. And before we wrap up, I just wanted to say that your book can be very centering because you intersperse these really impactful scriptures throughout your book. And one that really has been just rattling around in my head ever since I read this is that the Sabbath is for man and that God created it for us. And it is his gift. And I'm like, gosh, I'm thinking we have this weekend, I think we're celebrating literally 6 birthdays. What would it be like if I placed a gift in my son's hands and he just set it to the side and didn't want to open it, And I do that. Right. I do that because God's holding out this gift of Sabbath to me. How many times do I not open it, right? So, yeah. So I was just hoping that you could pray for me and pray for our listeners today who really do want to just receive that gift from God. He knows what is good for us and he loves us so much. Would you be willing to pray for us today?
I would. Heavenly Father, I put Joanna and me and every other person here who is listening to these words right now, and I put us directly into your hands. We fight for Sabbath because we know that it's good for our souls. And God, we live in a society that rewards action, that rewards busyness, that rewards contribution. God, I pray that I would be more inclined to trust you for the rest, that we each would be more inclined to trust you for the rest. God, we are so grateful that you care so deeply about not just our spiritual health, but our mental health, our physical health. And you knew what Sabbath was and how desperately we needed it. God, I pray that you would help us practice the practice of Sabbath, that we would get a little bit better at it each time and trust you more for the things, for the time, for the energy, for the money that we feel like, oh no, but we know that we can trust you. And it's in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. Well, hey, everyone's been hearing us talk all about this book. Where is the very best place to learn more about you? Because you have so much to offer, even way past this book. But where can we find you online and get a hold of this?
Yeah. So there's a site, sabbathsoup.com, where you can get a lot of these downloads. But also, if you're struggling with clutter, and we talk a lot about meal planning and things like that in this group too, you can go to Kathi Lipp's Clutter Free Academy on Facebook. It's a free group. We've got about 16,000 people in there who are all trying to figure this out. And we will encourage and help you. So we'd love for you to find us over there.
That's great. And we will be definitely sure to put all the links of all this great stuff in our show notes too, so nobody has to miss out. So thank you. Yeah, Kathi, this has been so fun. Yes, I've been looking forward to it.
I know it feels like chatting with an old friend because you are an old friend and I'm so grateful for it. So thank you so much for this.
Yes. And blessings on you as you go forward and in your holidays too.
And to you guys too.
Thanks so much. And thank you, friends, for joining us for the Growing Home Together podcast today. Rob and I would just love to connect with you over on our website at growinghometogether.com. You're going to find all kinds of resources and articles and things to help you make memories with your kids, such as joke books to share a laugh with them and books to help you pray over your children and pray as a couple. And Rob and I would just love to meet you over there. At Growing Home Together, we're caring for the soul of your family and growing home together with you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Growing Home Together podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found some valuable insights to help you care for the soul of your family. Remember to check out growinghometogether.com for more resources and stay tuned for our next episode coming your way soon.